Here we are at Quick Fix Quick Fix Golf and our typical Wednesday night shenanigans at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We hope you'll join us. All you got to do is go to quickfixgolf.com and click on free online class and go ahead and get the link and you're in. And we have a special guest tonight, which is Lou Stagner.
And I'm Darren DeMailey.
And I'm Bobby Lopez.
And we're the PGA pros at Tupelo Bay.
And here's our website. All you got to do is go to quickfixgolf.com and get out your cell phone and video your swing from the front and the back and email it off to us or upload it to the site, and we'll do a free analysis.
Not a penny out of your pocket. You owe it to yourself. You got nothing to lose.
You got nothing to lose except we'll assign a drill that's going to make you even worse than you are now. So that's here's our special guest tonight, Lou. There's the picture you.
There it is, Lou.
That's a good one.
There it is.
Tell us about the bear. What was the deal?
Yeah, how much? How much did it cost you to win that?
We bought $3 worth of rings, and we hit it on, I don't know, the second or third throw, and we've won one of those things 2 years in a row. We go to Hershey Park every year in the summer, and 2 years in a row I've had to carry a 40-pound bear about 4 miles back to the car in the middle of the day. We still have them. My daughter loves them, but I hope we don't win another one next year, to be honest.
I hope they're paying the royalty for using my mother-in-law's likeness.
Boo, boo.
And then we brought a picture of you so you can see.
Well, there you go. That's a spinning image.
Not bad, huh? We put that picture all over Tehran right now. You'll be really popular.
There you go.
And there's Lou Stagg and stuff. Now, Lou, you're with Decade Golf. Why don't you tell us what Decade Golf's all about?
Sure. Scott Fawcett started Decade years ago. I recently partnered with Scott a few months back, and Scott really created this. He took all the information that we've learned from strokes gained, and he applied that math to course management. And he's worked with, dozens of touring pros across multiple tours, and countless elite amateur players, and there's dozens of colleges, D1 college programs around the country that are using his approach and his system and his app. And I was thrilled to partner with him a few months ago. We got a lot of things going on and a lot of things that are going to be coming out over the next year or so. So it's pretty exciting times.
I want to say thanks, Lou, for coming on. We're very lucky that we got you to speak tonight. I mean, I can't even imagine how many people are trying to suck the blood out of you. So thank you so much for coming on tonight.
I wouldn't thank you too much. What the hell's the big deal here?
I appreciate you guys having me. Thank you.
Hey, I want you to help us with our new name. We're trying to come up with a name for the two of us, because of this webinars that we're doing. We're just wondering, how about Whiff and Divot?
That sounds good.
Well, we tried Spick and Span, and that didn't work either.
I'm not Whiff.
You're not Whiff. I'm Whiff. All right, we'll think of another name. So maybe some of you guys that are listening in tonight can give us an idea of a name for the two groups. Let's go. We're moving to the next slide. Let's see. Decade is a simple process that does all the work for you. What work does it do for us, Lou?
Well, it really helps you to pick appropriate targets. That's really what course management is all about. I have a math background. It's what I do. I have a day job. This isn't my full-time job. I work in corporate America. I run an analytics team, and I really apply the same approach to course management, which is how Scott tackles it as well. And every golf shot is essentially a math problem. Not to bore your listeners with the math aspect of this, but you use the math to understand your dispersion pattern, and that allows you to pick the appropriate target. And from there, you can maximize your scoring potential by picking correct targets. That's really Decade in a nutshell, and that's course management in a nutshell.
What amazes me, Lou, is that Nicklaus, how many years ago, it figured it out, but nowadays we can measure that. Do you find that that's the case, that Jack had it right all those years ago, and now we're just kind of putting measurements to it?
Yeah, I don't know for sure. If I had to bet money, I'm guessing that Jack was a tactician and played optimal golf by picking optimal targets. And for those on the call that are familiar with Scott and have heard Scott talk or see what Scott posts, Scott often references Tiger Woods and how Tiger really is implementing just perfect course management strategy. And it might sound like a sales pitch, but someone like me has really looked at the numbers in detail, all the strokes gained info. And when you dissect Tiger and the way he played the game, it's so obvious that he was just essentially picking very, very safe targets, not putting himself in harm's way, and then allowing just variance to have rounds where his shot pattern missed closer to the hole those days. And he's a tremendous putter, and he just took advantage of that, and he just limited his big misses more than anyone over the last 2 or 3 decades.
Yeah, I think that's so true about the way Tiger played the game and the way Jack played the game. I think they played the exact same way.
Yeah, I wish they had strokes gained back when Jack was playing. It would be great to be able to compare the way Jack played the game to the way Tiger played the game. It'll be interesting 20 years from now to compare whoever the next superstar like Tiger is going to be able to compare them against Tiger from the early 2000s once we started to have that shot level detail.
Well, we've got a special deal going for you tonight, Lou. We call it Fact or Fiction.
Oh.
Yes, we have the Fact or Fiction.
We're going to play a game tonight. Do you want to play a game?
Fact or Fiction?
It's a game.
Oh, boy, that's making me nervous.
Did you see the screen?
I can see the screen, yes.
And you should lay up to the yardage that is comfortable for a full swing.
This is this is my pet peeve. I hear people all the time saying they want to lay up to a yardage, and I know Greg Norman was a big fan of this. What do the stats tell us there, Lou?
Well, the stats tell us that you generally want to get the ball as close to the hole as you can for a given shot. You obviously need to consider hazards and out of bounds and potential situations where you're going to have to pitch out sideways, get yourself into a recovery situation. But generally, the math says closer is better. And one of I think the challenges with laying up is no guarantee of leaving yourself a shot in the fairway. One of the things I posted a few weeks ago was looking just at situations where a tour pro was in the fairway and had between 250 and 275 yards to the hole on a par 5. And I looked at the players that decided to lay up. Now, they could have been on a downhill lie. They could have been in divot. There could have been some circumstances that dictated layup was a good choice for them given what was going on. But the point I want to make here is when you're laying up, you're not guaranteeing the fairway. So of those players that I looked at that decided to lay up, and I considered a layup any shot where they left their third shot 90 yards or more from the hole. So these are the best in the world, essentially advancing the ball about 165 yards to a fairway that's probably going to vary from 20 yards to 28 yards almost all of the time. They miss the fairway 17% of the time. And so now they've put themselves in a position where they're going to be somewhere between 90 and 120, and they're going to be in the rough, and they've just made the hole substantially more difficult. The way that Decade works, the way that course management works is you need to calculate your expectation on these shots. And you have to consider all the trouble up there if you try to get it as close to the green as possible, and realize that some percentage of the time you will end up in trouble, but some percentage of the time you won't. You'll end up in the fairway. You'll end up in the rough from a playable position. And you need to factor all of that in when you're trying to make the proper decision on how to manage your way around the course.
So you're saying that closer is better no matter what?
Yeah, most of the time, closer is better no matter what. Certainly if there's water down there, if you're trying to go for the green in 2, that's certainly a consideration, and that will impact how you decide to play the hole. But it really is a math problem, and trying to calculate your expected value so that you do know that you are making the most mathematically correct decision, and realizing that when you are going for it, there will be some times that you hit it into the water if it's a hole that has some trouble. And you just have to realize you can't take one occurrence and say, well, I should never do that again because of this one time. You have to think of it, what would happen if you played this ball from this location 1,000 times? And you have to average out, and more than likely, your best bet for achieving the lowest overall score is to get it as close as possible.
That's what
But
I used to take lessons from a guy he won the PGA championship one time. Oh, crap.
It was 100 years ago?
It was 100 years ago, yeah, back in the 50s.
Nice, yeah.
Chick Harbert. And he used to say, when you look at any shot, Lopez, figure if you had to hit it 10 times in a row, what would your average score be? So, that's very, so we're going to say this is fiction.
yes, I would say that is fiction.
Oh, we got that one right. Oh, hold on. There you go. There's the applause.
All right, so we got one right. Now, what's the
Okay,
next one?
next
here?
one. Fact or fiction?
When putting from short distances, players will make more putts from above the hole, or meaning downhill.
They're going to make more downhill putts.
Yeah. We got that one right too. All right.
No, I am saying.
So go ahead.
More putts.
On the short putts.
Well, define short putt.
Let's say 5 feet and in.
5 feet and in. So I have some numbers up here on 5 feet and in, and I can tell you that uphill has a much higher make rate than downhill. So from 5 feet, I'm just looking at a 5 foot number right now.
Yep.
The make rate from exactly 5 feet is about 75%. When you're looking at uphill putts overall are about 76.5%. Downhill putts are about 73.5%. So there's about a 3 to 4% difference in 5 footers between uphill and downhill. And one of the things that's really interesting, what I took the data and I really got into the details of the putt, and I would create a break profile for each putt. So using all the data in the ShotLink system, and what I tried to do was not just look at uphill and downhill, but I wanted to look at slope, left to right, right to left, and how much slope it has. And the thing that's really jumped out at me is that uphill putts, yes, they have a higher make rate than downhill putts. And I'm just talking about 5 feet right now. It's the data I have in front of me. This holds true in shortish putts. There's a little variance depending on the length of the putt, but overall this holds true. The thing that I found most fascinating is that the make rate is higher on uphill putts that have more break. And I put these in buckets of slope between less than 1 degree, 1 to 2 degrees, and 2 to 3 degrees. And left to right and right to left uphill putts that have between 2 and 3 degrees of slope have the highest make rates. I've talked to a few people about this, and their takeaway, in their opinion, was that when you have a putt that clearly has a large break, there's less of a chance to misread that versus a straight putt where it can be much more difficult to read that. So, the answer there is uphill putts are more of them are going to go in the hole.
And you said you're using degrees, not percentage?
Slow percentage, yes. Sorry.
Okay,
Yep.
Okay, great. Awesome.
All right, so that is
How'd you guys do on that one?
fact.
No, we lost on that one.
We lost on that
We
one?
lost.
Well, lost on that one.
You're the one that did it.
I know, we lost. Oh, well.
Fact or fiction? Professional golfers will have better scores on average with a 125-yard shot over water with a short flag rather than over land.
Let me see if I understand that. They'll have better scores with a shot over water with a short flag rather than over land. That's not something I've looked at. I know that there's some other folks that have looked at that, and I believe that when you put a hazard in play and it's a front pin, I believe that tour players are adjusting their yardages accordingly to avoid the hazard. So I would say that this is fact for a tour player. I think it's different for amateur players, but for a tour player, I believe this to be fact, but I haven't looked at it though.
Right. We're 2 for 3.
There you go.
2 for 3.
Yep, we said
fact.
Fact.
Yes, game on.
Fact or fiction? Players on average should take one more club in most situations.
Are we talking tour players or amateur players?
Amateur players.
Yeah, I would say that is fact. Even tour players leave a pretty fair number of their shots short. If you look at it and you try to understand what their intention was and try to find holes and situations where they may be intentionally trying to hit the ball short for one reason or another, even when you control for that, this is, I think, a pretty fair generality. I won't say it's always going to be that, but I would say in general, yes, this is a fact.
Well, like Darren and I were discussing it yesterday, and I says, it seems like every green you go to, you look and you'll see all the ball marks on the front edge of the green. People just don't get the ball to the hole.
They don't, and there and like a lot of these questions, there are some nuances. It's not an absolute.
No.
If you're playing St. Andrews, that's different than if you're going to play Pebble. The greens at St. Andrews are five times.
Yeah, we're not trying to put you on the spot. We're general.
Yeah, we are.
We're general.
No, yep. In general, I'd say that's a fair assessment.
You want to go back to the Donald Trump haircut?
I haven't had hair in 20 years, so I'll take whatever I can get.
Hair's overrated.
Hey, it's overrated. Yeah, my grandfather was bald, and my mother used to say, if you get hair on the top of your head, it'll help grow hair. My grandfather said, "I've got hair on top of my head for years. I have to be a damn minute." Laying up with a shorter club is better than hitting a driver.
What do you think on those kind of questionable par fours where you got an option to hit driver and then lay up with an iron or a fairway wood?
Well, I generally think that that hitting the ball as far as you can down the field is the appropriate play. And there's a couple of things I've released around this topic. There's one a few months ago that I released, and it's a calculator, and it allows you to enter a different scenario, and it's pretty interesting. It's fun to play with. It's based on tour data, but in general, most of this will carry over to an amateur player. And what you can do is you can imagine a hole that you want to hit driver off of, and maybe there's some trouble on the hole. And on the left side of this tool, this calculator, you can enter what percentage of the time you'll hit the fairway if you try to hit your driver, what percentage of the time you'd end up in the rough, fairway bunker, what percentage of the time you'd hit it into a recovery situation where you have to pitch out sideways or hit into a penalty area or hit it out of bounds. And I have this up in front of me right now, and I have a situation where it's a par 4, and if I hit my driver, I'm going to end up between 70 and 79 yards from the hole. You can select that in the tool as well. And I've entered that I'll hit the fairway 40%, the rough 40%, a fairway bunker 10% of the time, and I'm going to hit into a recovery situation 5% of the time, which means I have to pitch out sideways, and I'm going to hit it into a penalty area, so there's a water hazard up there. I'm going to hit into that 5% of the time. On the right-hand side of the tool, I'm laying up, and I'm going to lay up 60 yards back from what my driver would give me, so maybe that's some type of a hybrid for me. And I enter in the tool that 85% of the time I'm going to hit the fairway, and 15% of the time I'll hit the rough. And when you look at that and you compare that for a tour player, the really dangerous situation where I'm chipping out sideways 5% and in the water 5% of the time, and in a fairway bunker from an awkward yardage 10% of the time, and I only hit the fairway 40% of the time, the average number of shots for a tour player in that situation to get in the hole from where the ball ended up off the tee is 2.88 shots. Now, the other situation where I laid back 60 yards with whatever club that is, and I hit the fairway 80%, 85% of the time, which is very challenging to do at that yardage, and I only hit the rough 15% of the time, and I never hit a bunker, I never find any other trouble, the average number of shots to get in the hole from that situation is 2.89. So it's to me, the takeaway here is when you understand your shot patterns and you apply the math and say, yes, I'm not going to hit the fairway 100% of the time with my driver, and there will be some percentage of the time where I find some trouble, and you enter the numbers and you look at it, the numbers will dictate what the play is going to be. It will give you the best overall chance for making the lowest score. And just another tool that I released, and you can find it on Twitter, was looking specifically at Riviera Country Club, the 10th hole, which is about one of the most interesting holes, drivable holes. And any way you look at it, hitting the ball farther off the tee is advantageous.
No doubt.
It's what you want to do. And the players that hit the ball 280 yards or more off that tee, they score on an average 3.88 on that hole. The players that lay back between 220 and 240 yards off the tee, that fairway at 220 to 240 out, I think it's about 60 yards wide. For those guys, it's a runway. They don't miss that fairway too often. They average 4.02 shots if they lay up on that hole. So the numbers, and you can go out and you can play with the tool. You can find it on my Twitter account. And in that situation on that hole, going for it is absolutely the play every single time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the perfect example for, our audience to kind of take away. I mean, it's I just don't get why players would be hitting an iron off that tee, and a lot of our audience really doesn't understand that hole, but I think that's kind of the benchmark for that question there of laying up or hitting your driver. It just is a no-brainer.
Well, I just really hit me exactly what you're doing, Lou, and it's really great. I'll tell you what. How does an average golfer take advantage of that information and that data that you've collected and apply it to their game?
Well, I'm like the average golfer. My index is 9.5. I checked it. I think it adjusted maybe 0.2 of a shot after they released the new system a few days ago.
Most of our students are in the low thousands.
And I apply this to my game as well, and I always was. I was never overly confident in hitting 3-wood off the deck or hitting some of my longer hybrids on second shots on par 5s, and on par 4s, shorter par 4s. I was often reaching for the hybrid to try to put it in play. And after I got into the numbers a little bit more a few years ago, after Every Shot, Brody's book came out, Every Shot Counts, and I started to understand the game much different than I ever had in the past, and quickly realized that for my game, laying up, I'm just costing myself shots. And I've been tracking my stats for a long time in golf, and it's pretty obvious when I look at my own game as a 10 index player for the last 7 or 8 years, that hitting the ball further is 100% advantageous for me.
Now, is part of that the way the golf courses are set up today?
What do you mean by that?
Well, in the old days, the old time days, and of course, the ball spun a lot more, so you get a lot more curvature out of the flight path. But, you talk about the old U.S. Opens where the fairways were 25, 27 yards in width, and some of the golf courses today are set up for the long hitters. The rough is long and whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly not a golf course architecture specialist, and that's really not my wheelhouse. And I think golf course architecture has changed a bit, and I think on tour courses they're certainly catering to maybe what is popular to see on TV. They just signed a huge TV deal over 10 years, and I don't know the details of that, but I have to think that people enjoy watching birdies rather than bogeys, and I have to imagine that plays into course setups and whatnot. I think
you look at the Masters. The Masters has been lengthened 4 times now.
Yeah, and I think that golf course technology has been changing for the last 150 years, and so if you go back to 1970s technology and compare that to 1920s technology, it's significantly different. So it just continues to change, and I think we all need to take advantage of that as much as we can. and just adapt with it. That's kind of where I stand on it. But I certainly understand some of the impacts of some of the great courses out there and what length can do to that. I'm not blind to that, but to me, I'm the only constant is change is kind of how I like to look at it.
All right, so this is fiction. Laying up with a shorter club is fiction. Your score is based on your driving distance.
Well, I think there's a lot of information out there around that, especially for amateur players. I know TrackMan did a pretty in-depth look at this, and others have looked at it. And the further you hit the ball, the lower your handicap is probably going to be.
Wait, say that again.
The further you hit the ball, the lower your handicap will be. It's a pretty strong correlation. It's a pretty strong correlation there. So speed is very important, whatever level you are at.
Say that again?
There you go.
Well,
just keep.
So you're a proponent of the longer, lighter golf club for the driver that will hit the ball further, or?
Well, why wouldn't he be?
Yeah, well, I would want you to ask that from someone probably more intelligent on the topic. Get a good club fitter in here to give you the math behind that. But
intelligent on one of our webinars.
but whatever you can do to increase your speed and hit the ball further is very important, and it will help your game.
All right, so that's fact. There we are again. Remind everyone that you can just get out your cell phone and video your swing front and back and send it to us, and we'll do a complete analysis. We'd like to open up the board and see if there's some questions from some of the peanut gallery. Let's see.
Yeah.
I'm going to open this up. Hopefully, we won't get a bunch of
Just mute Belmont's.
My buddy Belmont, my buddy. Let me see here. Okay, Art, you have any questions, buddy? Artie. Art.
Hey, Bobby.
Was that your wife barking in the background?
I'm trying to think of something.
Quiet
When you tell her to roll over, does she do it? All right, go ahead.
All right, go ahead, Art. Enough. This isn't a new breed of golf.
Yeah, amen.
You have a question?
Who lives in Australia now? She was at Sydney's.
Somebody's in the background here. I'll have to open them up one at a time here. Who's got a question?
Bueller.
I'm going to go one at a time.
Bueller.
So, Art, you don't have a question.
I do too.
That's what I got to do right there. So, Al, do you have a question? I don't know if he has a microphone. Alex Trested.
Sippy's got a question.
Sippy's always got a question. Let's see, where's Sippy? Unbelievable. All right, that's the one that was doing it. Tom, do you have a question? I guess you didn't have a question. Paul Belmont, you have a question.
Yes.
Go ahead, buddy.
Hold on. This question is going to cost you $1.99. Make sure you put in a credit card.
I got the $1.99 and I got some foreign money for you.
Your sons are not anywhere near all the activity going on right now, are they?
No, thank you for asking, though.
Okay, good.
What I heard is that no matter, and I'm being a little facetious, but no matter what, on a 320-yard hole, no matter what hazards the designer presents to you, no matter whatever, always, always, always smash your driver. Never lay up to 100 yards to avoid trouble. That's what I'm getting out of this. And I'm not agreeing, but I'm okay to.
Go ahead.
I don't get that.
Tell him.
I got plenty of holes that I can drive it in the woods on 289-yard par fours every time. But if I hit a 4-iron, I got an 80-yard shot in, and I'm never in trouble.
Yes, and it's a good question. And the way I would answer it is the decade system that Scott invented has a decision tree for selecting driver off the tee, and depending what hazards are up there, how much room is available between hazards, and some of this varies based on the skill level of the player. A tour player is going to have a much tighter shot dispersion than I do. So they are going to be able to hit shots that I'm not going to be able to hit. And so Scott in the decade system created a decision tree to walk you through that. And yeah, you're absolutely correct. There are plenty of situations where driver is not the correct play and you will want to lay up. Yeah, absolutely 100%. But what you need to do is you need to walk through that decision tree. And I don't know that I can give the decision tree out completely. That's part of the app and what Scott does. But absolutely, there are plenty of situations where driver is not the play. But when it is the play, that's when it's important to hit it. And just accept the variance that you'll get from hitting your driver, but knowing that in the long term, that's the right play. And when you go through the decision tree, you will find plenty of situations where driver is not the right play.
Lou, just tell us a little bit how our customers and friends can get in contact and find out about this tree and get engaged with Decade Golf and you and tell us a little about your Twitter.
Sure, you can find me on Twitter at Lou Stagner. It's LOUSTAGNER, and then you can find us online at playinglesson.com. Playinglesson.com. And if you want to follow Scott on Twitter, he's a great follow. I've been following him.
Oh boy.
WCETT.
Say that one more time.
Scott Fawcett, SCOTT You can find him on Twitter as well.
And there's so much information out there about how to fix your golf swing, but there's very limited on how to actually think and kind of play the game. And my years around Nicklaus, I spent 7 years working for Jack Nicklaus, and everything that he really talked about was about what you and Scott kind of talk about, and I think it's so important, but not many golf professionals out there talk about how to think and how to play the game. So I would definitely encourage everyone to get out there and look at the information that you guys have out there.
Yeah. When I was taught by the old pro that taught me as a young kid, he used to say things like, I'd have a 20-foot putt, and he says, you want to make birdie, but you want to make par even worse. So it was an attitude, you knew that, hey, don't get too aggressive.
Exactly. Yep.
How to think on the golf course on each shot. Say, I want to do this, but I'd rather do that even more. I'd like to hit a drive all the way down to the bottom of the fairway, but I want to be in the fairway even worse than that. So it's a mindset. And with what Lou's doing, it's a mindset with actual data to back it up.
Exactly. It's a measurement. Yep.
Which is really good. So, Lou, I congratulate you guys, man. You're doing a good job.
I appreciate it. Thanks very much. And just
let me see if we got Bob Reardon. Bob, you have a question? Paul?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Hey, this friend. Hey, Lou, a lot of, I guess, with analytics, a lot is going against conventional wisdom. So there are a couple things that you've discovered that really are part of the conventional wisdom lore of golf that are really against those areas of conventional wisdom.
What I'd say about that is the whole drive for dough, putt, or the drive for show, putt for dough.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, that's that we could probably talk about that topic, for another hour and still have 10 hours more to talk about it. I think having shot level data since 2004, literally millions of shots at the tour level, has allowed the numbers geeks like myself to dive in and really understand what's going on. And Mark Brody really led the way with this. So if you don't have every shot counts, I recommend buying it and reading it. There's some good information in there that helps you understand at a different level. And after joining Scott and having access to the Decade app, so Scott has thousands of people that are using the Decade app and have entered countless number of rounds. I have millions and millions of shots of amateur players of varying levels of ability, and I've been able to analyze that and dive into the details of that. And a lot of what I post on Twitter is aimed at tour players, but when you look at the amateur data, which I don't really post much, if any, of, when you look at the amateur data, a lot of those concepts carry over pretty directly to amateur players in one way or another. So, I would say, as we've seen, we have a couple of golf instructors on the phone, and they'll tell you that after TrackMan came out, there was a fundamental shift in understanding ball flight laws, and they were significantly different than what people had thought for years. And that technology allowed us to understand what's really happening with face and path, delivering angle of attack, and how that all happens and how that impacts the golf flight. So, the math and strokes gained is really just allowing us to do course management and what drives good play. The math is allowing us to understand that just the same way that TrackMan allowed us to better understand the true ball flight laws. I'm going to let our PGA pros to jump in, Bobby and Darren, and kind of chime in on that.
Well, there's no doubt about it, Lou. I mean, I was there working for Nicklaus, and we didn't have TrackMan, and then one week we did, and I saw the difference in the numbers and the measurement. But it's a different time nowadays, and we certainly appreciate you coming on. But just one more time, tell our listeners how they can get in touch with you and kind of sign up. You guys have just phenomenal stuff that people need to take a look at.
Yeah, thanks for the kind words. You can find me on Twitter at Lou Stagner, LOUSTAGNER, and you can find us online at playinglesson.com. And stay tuned. Scott and I have a number of things planned for this year. We're putting together some scoring strategy schools that we've announced some teaser information about that. So look for some new info on that coming up soon. And Scott also teased a little bit that he and I are in the beginning stages of writing a book focused on strategy. So expect to see something later on in the year from us around that to really quantify and put this down on paper and give someone a roadmap to help them better understand what all this means and how they can apply it.
As an old timer pro like myself, and one last tip I give to all our listeners here is that sometimes you have to go by your intuition, in a sense. And you know how you're playing that day, how you're feeling that day, and how aggressive you want to be, considering what your swing is feeling like at the moment. So I don't know where that fits into all the statistics, but you just got to be sensible and be calm when you're playing golf. You can't lose your cool, you can't lose your temper, you can't get crazy. You got to learn how to be calm and look at things analytical. And play within yourself, as Nicklaus used to say, play within yourself.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, and I would agree with that. I think the numbers can help you, but I think there's many more factors that go into playing your best golf, and I think the trick is to be open to all of them and understand what works for you in your game, right, and apply that as best you can.
Well, Lou, you're a champ, man. You're a champ for coming on, and we'll
We're gonna send you a nice fruit basket.
Sounds good. I'll take it.
Darren will send you flowers. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on tonight. I enjoyed the chat, and I look forward to doing it again soon.
I hope so. It was a pleasure, Lou.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Lou.
For listening in, and we enjoyed having you, and we'll be putting this up right away as soon as we get it transferred.
Sounds good.
We'll put it out so everybody you can send it to all your friends. Send it to your friends and tell them all about it, and tell them to come out here on Wednesday nights and see us.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys. Have a great night.
Thanks, Lou.